Hi and welcome to the Partyology Experience. I'm here today with 𝚂𝙾𝙲𝙸𝙰. We're talking about her planning of her wedding over the next few months. And in today's podcast, we're going to talk about budget, research and guest lists. Now these sort of things we get asked all the time, what should you do, what order should you do? I think these three things, I've put them sort of together because you sort of need to do them all at the same time. So I guess the first thing you need to work out really is a guest list, because once you've got your guest list, you can then work out a budget, and when you're researching, you'll know what size venue to look for and how many people you're catering for. So once you've done your guest list, then it'll give you a good idea of what sort of budget you're going to need for your reception and for all the other things. So Emma, in your research so far or doing your guest list, how many have you got coming to your wedding?
So around 100, it's sitting about 112 at the moment, which I think it probably will stay closer to that amount than 100, but we've just told the venue 100 now until we work out who's coming and who's not coming, yes. The best way that we kind of work this out is we actually did have an engagement party, so we just used the same list and then sort of took some people off that we thought weren't going to be invited to the wedding and then added a couple if we needed to.
How many did you have in your engagement party?
135.
Okay, so you've basically lost, say, 20 people.
Yeah.
Have you found it hard to sort of cull it down a bit?
Not too bad, to be honest. Some people I think knew they were just coming to the engagement party and weren't going to be invited to the wedding. There were people that were like friends of friends that we knew, but we invited them to the engagement and not coming to the wedding. So it wasn't too bad, to be honest. I think if I had to cull it down to 100, it would be more of an issue because I think those 12 people would be very upset. At the moment, around 112 is not too bad. Yeah, people sort of say they struggle a lot with guest lists and how many to invite and how to fit everybody into, some sort of budget. You should only really invite people to your wedding that you think you're going to be friends with in 5 years. Yeah.
Now that sort of makes it hard if you're working with people and you may have worked with them for a couple of years and you've created a great relationship. If for whatever reason you left that job, you've got to ask yourself the question, would I still be friends with this person after I leave this job or if they left? If you follow that rule, then you probably will find it easier to cut back on your guest list.
Work is a hard one because I think you work with these people all the time, so you have to face the music if you don't invite them and if you are going to keep working there. But if you don't see yourself being friends with them outside of work, really like long term, then I don't think that it's something you should be looking into. I think you should just not invite them. And it is hard, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I find sometimes with guest lists, it's hard when you've got parents that are like, but I want to have my friends there. So then they'll be like, well, we'll pay for our friends. And it gets into some of those sort of things as well. So especially if your parents are sort of paying for some of it as well, you do get in that sort of sticky situation. And you and your partner really talk about it and you kind of work it out that way. Even speaking to my parents a couple of days ago, they said they could cull like 40% of the people that went to their wedding. They said it was ridiculous. Yeah. And I don't want to look back and go, I could have invited, 60 people or whatever it was. We literally have 100 people, 112 that are like our closest, dearest, family and friends. So
it's really quality over quantity, isn't it?
100%. Like, and I don't want to have 200 people there watching me get married. It's bad enough as it is.
So let's talk the important thing, I guess, budget. Budget's a big thing for everybody. Obviously, budget determines what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and when, all that sorts of thing. So have you set a budget or have you, how have you worked out how much money to spend on each component of your wedding?
This was a hard one for us, I think, because we're both on sort of different terms. I think I have more realistic ideas of how much things cost and BJ has no idea. When I told him some of the costs of what it was going to be on the day, I think he nearly had a heart attack and fell on the floor. So I've actually decided not to talk to him too much about budget and I'll just go along with it. We didn't want to spend crazy amounts of money. We do want to spend more money on renovating our house, as we spoke about last time. But we have picked a sort of a rough idea on when we're both sort of happy. I think I'll be happy to go over it by about 5,000, but that will probably be pushing it with him.
Yeah. So, as we say, budget is super hard. And I guess it really is hard to set a budget when you don't, if you aren't in the industry. If you're not in the industry, you have no idea how much it's going to cost you per head at a function centre or how much a photographer costs or the celebrant. So I guess really you can't sort of set a proper budget until you've researched.
Until you research. I think a lot of, I think for me, because I kind of understood how much things cost, it wasn't so like oh wow, this is going to cost me a fortune. I think some brides go into this going, I want this and this and this, and then they get to it and they're like, that's going to cost me $10,000 to have that, and I really want it. And then I think that's when they start to get a bit upset or they turn into bridezillas because they want what they want, but they don't have the money to afford it. Yeah,
that's right.
I think lots of people need to do more research before they go into these huge grand plans and then let themselves down. Yeah. I think that's sort of the one thing I find people really do, and it's hard to come back from that when you're that high.
I guess Instagram and Pinterest and all those make it super hard because you see 100%. These glamorous weddings and you don't realise that that particular setup was $100,000 just in the decor alone, let alone food, drinks, and everything else. So that's where it does make it hard. So I guess research. will then give you a better idea for your budget. If you are struggling with, what should you spend your money on for your wedding, we have on the 𝚂𝙾𝙲𝙸𝙰 Events website, if you go there, we've got a blog post on rough percentages on what you should spend your budget on that may give you some idea of where you should allocate your money.
Yes.
Now, obviously, your wedding reception, the venue is going to probably take the most of your budget, but you've got to think, is the money you're spending on your wedding going to give you the result that you want?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of time when people are planning, they're not necessarily doing that. So they want party of the year, but they're spending their money on really fancy cars that are costing them $10,000 to hire these fancy cars. That
will see them for 10 seconds.
Yeah,
and then
nobody sees them, or you're only in them for 5 minutes and then you're in the reception anyway. So, even flowers, and I mean, obviously everybody has flowers in some degree for their wedding, but some people go over the top, but then say they want their wedding to be really fun and more of a party, and is those flowers, are those flowers really adding to that fun party? Should they have spent that budget maybe on more entertainment?
Yes.
They then scrimp on the entertainment because they spend all their money on everything else.
Yeah.
And then the entertainment is what makes it sort of maybe more fun. I guess it's, what's going to be most important to you, and what's going to, what are you going to get best value for money?
Yeah,
so,
and working your budget around that too. I think a lot of couples should sit down and go, okay, these are the most important points for us. We're going to spend more money on those things because they're important to us, and then the things underneath are not so important. And I think that's the best way to do it, to be honest.
So in doing your research, what have you found to be good and bad? From your personal point of view, obviously you deal with venues and all sorts of stuff all the time, so you're dealing with them on a different level. But when it comes to your own wedding and looking at, say, venues and that sort of thing, and just other suppliers, what's been the good and bad parts of that?
This has actually been quite eye-opening for me, to be honest. I think because it's now, I have to organise it for myself. I'm very particular. And I think because I know so much about the industry and venues and sort of what I wanted, I had a very sort of tight idea on how I wanted it to go. So, for example, an issue that I find a lot is that the actual access times to get into a venue on the day to do your installation of your room is only like 2 hours. Now, for me, doing this as a job, I know things take a lot longer than 2 hours. So I wanted somewhere that would be flexible with me and let me have all day, because I knew that I was going to be able to do as much as I possibly could in that day, and make it look as how I wanted it to, because I feel people also have these grand plans. Yes, they cost a lot, but they also take a lot of time to install as well. So you might see that floral installation, it's $10,000, but it takes 6 hours to install. You don't have that time, so then you have to pay more on top of your venue costs just to get the extra time, which I think was getting lots of people, and I have lots of brides complain about this all the time, just saying that it's sort of misleading in the fact that they pay $20,000 for a venue, but then it's an extra $5,000 for the extra time. So for me, I was watching out on that pretty quickly, going, I want a venue that's going to give me access times. Yeah. And also, of course, the collection as well, making sure that was a reasonable amount of time, not midnight that night, had to be out in half an hour. Yeah. It's not realistic for people.
So have you found with suppliers, have they been getting back to you on time? Is there long wait times for quotes, all those sorts of things?
I think it's hard at the moment. We're actually halfway through a pandemic, so it is a hard one to answer at the moment. I think it's slightly different. I'm finding it quite frustrating in the fact that a lot of people are taking a lot of time to get back, and being in this industry, I understand that people are busy, and for us at 𝚂𝙾𝙲𝙸𝙰 Events, sometimes it can take us 2 days to get back to people, and we of course try not to do that. But I'm waiting 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks for quotes, and I understand there's a pandemic, but you also feel like you want to be wanted as a bride, and that makes me not want to hire from them, because I'm like, if this is the hardest process, like, what's it going to be like on the day for me? I don't want that extra stress of having to wait 5 weeks for you to reply. So for me, I sort of just think, I'm being lenient, I'm giving them 2 or 3 weeks. I think that's perfectly fine. But 4 or 5 weeks is starting to get like really not important to you at all. Yeah,
and I think there's something in that. That's a good test.
Of course.
If you're finding you're dealing with suppliers, whether photographer, venue, whatever it might be, and they're taking weeks to get back to you from the initial beginning, you're exactly right. What's it going to be like when we do sign up or pay over some money? Are they going to be painful to deal with every time I have a quick question or something like that? Yeah. And organising a wedding can be stressful. There's lots involved in it. So I think that's a sign that if you're finding that a particular supplier is taking a while to get back to you, then maybe they're not the right choice.
And I found a lot of, in the world of Instagram, especially my age, it's, everyone's looking for Instagram and all the photos look amazing, but I find a lot of these Instagram accounts, they don't even have websites. And for me, it's sort of a bit of an alarm. Do I trust them or not? And I said, that sounds really horrible, but for me in the industry, I think, a website is something you just have across the board if you're in business. So I did find that a bit difficult. And it was really hard to get in contact with those people, because if they're not checking their Instagram all the time, like it was difficult, and if they didn't get their email, and I'm trying to chase them all the time, so
Yeah.
it was a bit hard.
Yeah, I guess, you know, doing research and the research you've done now, you're finding it easier to set the budget?
It is. I think I'm a Pinterest lover. I love Pinterest. I have about 400 million boards of everything. Like, as Marcus would know, I Pinterest every theme, every single thing. And I think I realistically know with some of these photos that I see that I understand how much it's going to cost. So yeah, the budget I think will be workable.
How much has it blown out so far since you started doing proper planning to just where you are now?
I'm going to have to blow it out because I haven't worked it out.
Oh, okay.
The hard part is I'm doing it in my head because I kind of know sort of where things are sitting at the moment. I really need to sit down and actually do the full budget, but I know sort of where I'm sitting. I think I'm sitting about 20,000 at the moment. I haven't really done all the nitty gritty things, which I know cost the most.
And 20,000 is for?
So that would be for the venue. Most of that's venue.
Venue, yeah.
Venue takes up a lot of that. And I know that, of course, I'm not doing a big, flashbang wedding. So some weddings start off at 20,000, 30,000 just for the venue. But I've also got, photography and stuff like that in there as well. So
yeah.
I found that the most expensive part at this stage is venue, which I knew. But
yeah.
photography and videography has really thrown me a little bit. I know Marcus already knows this because I've discussed it with him. But I just really didn't understand how much this costs. Like, we do it for work, but to do it for yourself as well and work out how much this costs, it was sort of a bit daunting for me because I was like, wow, I just realised that I thought I'd have, 4,000 or 5,000 would be max for me, but I'm looking from 7,000 to 8,000 to 9,000, and that's just a normal amount.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
That's where I think I've gotten stuck as a bride going, okay, what do I value? Do I value my photos or do I value the video more? So
that's right.
That's sort of something I'm weighing up at the moment cost-wise.
And that's another key thing there too. You want nice photos, and everybody does, and I think they're really important because that's going to help you remember. You just can't remember the day unless you've got these triggers.
Someone good too.
But it's like, how much money do I want to spend? Do I want to spend $10,000 on a photographer? And I know from personal experience and from speaking to lots of other people that those photos tend to go in the album. I'm old school. I've got photos in an album. Now it's digital, so maybe you might look at them more often.
They'll go on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah, but otherwise they go in the photo album in the cupboard and you pull it out maybe once every
anniversary, maybe every 10 years.
Every few years, or when the kids want to have a laugh at what you used to look like.
And what you wore to your wedding.
Yeah, when you were skinnier and had hair and not grey. Yes, that's right. So, that's what you've got to sort of think of too.
Yeah. It's a fine line, I think. And I want to spend more money on the entertainment and the fun part. As I said, I want it to be fun, but I also want to capture it as well. But it's the fine line of, I want to spend more money on this component than I do that, but I don't want to skimp on it either.
See, I think if I was to do it again, I would definitely now get a video.
Get a video, yeah.
Because you can see people's reactions and
it's more
whether
lively,
having
whether
having
see
fun.
What people's emotions are than just I know a photo can capture that, but a video is just so much more.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
One of my girlfriends got married. I watched her video and I cried the whole time. And we watched it 2 or 3 times, and I cry every time. Yeah. I'm like, I'm not a crier.
Yeah.
Why am I crying?
Yeah.
They're good.
So,
they're good at their jobs.
And that's right. So again, it's what's important to you, and this is
everyone's different.
This helps you decide. As we said before, if you're big into florals and you want it to look like
everyone's so different.
A florist shop, then spend heaps on flowers, and that will make you feel good.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, as we sort of talk about a lot at Feel Good events, is that going to create the best experience, or is that going to give you the end result that you want?
Yeah.
So the research then at this stage, you were saying you're only sort of part of the way through it. It's not too traumatic for you at this stage?
No, not at this stage. I think it's just more waiting for people to get back to me. But research-wise, most of the content, it's so easy, the digital age these days with Instagram and Pinterest, and you got everything at your fingertips. With the pandemic, remember, I can Zoom suppliers or FaceTime them or any of those sort of things. So it's definitely been a lot easier. I'm sure it's a lot easier from when you planned your wedding. You don't feel so stressed because you can see physically what their work is.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, when I this sounds old, but we used to have to ring up venues, and then they'd send us something in the mail because there was no internet.
And they'd send you a little album of photos that they've done at their venue.
That's right.
Goodness.
And a price list, and it took you. You're saying about a couple of weeks. This would be a couple of months.
Yeah.
So yes,
it's definitely changed.
I guess with the research and finding supplies and all that, it can be very stressful.
Yeah.
And one of the key things we find from weddings and any events and clients that we deal with is that you've got to have trust in those suppliers.
100%. If you don't trust them, then you're on the day worrying that if they're going to show up or not.
Yeah, that's right. Or are they going to do what they said they're going to do? So finding suppliers, no matter whether it's photographer or cake people or florists or whatever, you want to feel comfortable. You want to have a connection with those people so you can feel like they're not going to let you down. And that's super important.
Yeah.
If you don't connect with them and it's all about price, then you potentially can run into issues.
Yeah. It's not all about price.
No.
price comes down to it in a degree, but it's not my top one priority. Like it's always in the back of your mind, but it's like if I love someone and I clicked with them so well, I'd probably pay the extra $2,000 and just call it a day.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you've seen, say it's a photographer,
I love it. And, they've been really awesome to deal with, and I just thought they're just so easy. It made it seem so stress-free for me.
Yeah.
You will pay extra for that.
Exactly right. So we've covered the guest list. You're all sorted in that. You've worked out roughly how many you want to do. You're in the research path, and you've sort of got a budget at this point. So.
Yes.
You're on the way there. Hopefully, you'll be able to nut out the budget, I guess, when you've sort of finalised some of the suppliers and stuff that you
quotes,
want.
Waiting for the quotes to come back.
That's
and I think that's when I sort of firm up my budget. But I'm doing the thing that I tell everyone not to, and do your firm budget, and I haven't done a fair budget.
And look, if you're paying for the wedding yourself, which a lot of couples do these days, that obviously makes a difference on how much you spend. Yeah. We know the average spend for a wedding is around the $50,000 mark.
It's getting high now.
So that's a lot of money. So you really want it to be a good, fun time.
Well, it's a house deposit. You want to have a good night.
Yeah. If you're lucky enough to have parents or other family put in money, then that's great. But it's tough to work out that budget. But I guess from what you're saying, research to find out what supplies.
I think do that first before you really work out your budget, because I think some people they just have unrealistic ideas on how much things cost, and then I think they fall in love with a look and then they can't go backwards, and then they're becoming stressed because they can't afford what they want. And I think that I will go over my budget a little bit, and I'd be happy to spend a couple extra $1,000, because if it's going to be worth it, it'll be worth it, but not tens of thousands. I think don't stretch yourself to the point where you can't live.
That's right.
You're going to be eating rations for the next 3 years.
That's
right.
Not
you're worth it.
You'll be eating wedding cake for the 3 months afterwards because you can't afford food.
No one can eat the wedding cake. I'm eating it for the next five weeks.
That's right. Yeah, exactly right. And that's if you can afford the wedding cake. Okay, well, thanks, Emma. It's been great talking about budget and research. Stay tuned, and we'll be discussing more suppliers and everything to do with wedding planning in our next podcast. Thanks for listening.